All right, so Manchester United won last night. They beat a bad team, Derby County, but they're advancing to the FA Cup quarterfinal. They're still in the top four race and they're still in the Europa League. I feel like over the past few years, we've always tried to criticize Manchester United whenever they did something wrong, and they've often done a lot of wrong things. But here, we got to give them some credit. They've done well in 2020. 2020 has been good to Manchester United, and it looks like it's only going to get better. Look, I have my reservations with Solskjaer. I don't think he should be the manager going forward. I think if they want to be where they used to be at the top of English football or challenging for trophies in England and in Europe, they need another manager. But for now, they have Solskjaer. That's not a problem. That's not a big thing. The goal here is to get into the top four, whether you win the Europa League or you actually finish in fourth, which they are actually 3 points out of. So they're there. But what we should talk about is how they got it right in January. They signed Bruno Fernandes. He's been the best player in the league this month, I would like to say. Besides, let's say maybe Kevin De Bruyne, if we want to put him in that conversation. Bruno's been great. The fans love him. And the only reservation I had about Bruno was the fact that perhaps he doesn't adapt to English football quickly. Perhaps the fans turn on him quickly. And based off the fact that Manchester United have been the scapegoat for everything wrong with transfers over the past few seasons, if Bruno didn't get on the ground and running, a lot of people would be calling him a flop before the season even ended. Thank God that hasn't happened. Bruno looks great. He looks intelligent. He could score goals. He could create goals. He's everything that Manchester United lacked. Look, this Manchester United side is not a bad squad. They may be poorly managed. They may not have great players yet, but they're not a bad squad. They should be fighting for the top four, and they're going to be in that conversation till the end of the season. When you look at them, they have a good defense. I know a lot of people don't like Harry Maguire, Luke Shaw. They like to make fun of him. They don't think that they're great on paper. But besides the top three in Sheffield United, Manchester United have conceded the least amount of goals in the Premier League. And they still have David De Gea, who is a top three goalkeeper in the Premier League. You look at the midfield. Yeah, the names don't really get you. They don't really sell tickets. But Fred has improved this season. You see Matic has finally found his groove towards the end of his career. And Scott McTominay is turning into a cult hero there. Yes, I know the fact that when you play that nitty-gritty reactive type of football, you're going to look better and you have to find someone that is going to stand out. That has been McTominay, but there have been signs of improvement, and that's key to the way that Manchester United are going to possibly play going forward. No issues in the midfield. Up front, we know what they are. Young, talented, pacey, not there at their peak, slowly getting towards their prime. They're going to have to be a bit more clinical, but we've seen improvement. Overall, Anthony Martial is showing that he can play as a number 9. He's not the perfect number 9. He's flawed, but he'll get there. Marcus Rashford is scoring goals for fun. Daniel James has had a good first season. And Mason Greenwood could be the big deal if they take proper care of him. But the one issue that Manchester United this season have had is goals from midfield and productivity from midfield. They've looked good against the big teams. Their big team record is pretty good. They're able to sit deep, man v man mark across the pitch, hit teams on the counterattack. I get it. I like it. It works. Kudos to Solskjaer. But good managers, great managers, have to be able to do both. That's where the pragmatism comes into play. That's where you need to be able to adapt. Here, Manchester United, when teams drop off a bit deeper, they don't really have any answers. They have to rely on set pieces. They have to rely on moments of brilliance. They have to rely on individual mistakes. Bruno Fernandes fixes that problem. He is a difference maker. He gives them something that they don't have, the guile, the creativity, the goals in the final third from that midfield position, and he's going to make his teammates better. I like Bruno. Doesn't need to operate in the final third, can drop off deeper. When you look at his positioning throughout the season thus far for Manchester United, he often drops ahead of the opposing side's midfield bank and then plays those passes, and that's great. But the bigger question here now is, where did Manchester United go forward? Because there's a guy who's returning to training real soon, and he apparently wants to leave. But let's look at it from this perspective. What if Paul stays? Think about it. Paul Pogba, Bruno Fernandes. You could have McTominay, Fred, Matic behind him. If you don't want to go that way, Bruno could play deeper. He practically does. Yes, he operates in the final third. Yes, he operates between the lines, but he can play that midfield too, and you could finally have Paul Pogba up front right behind the striker. Paul Pogba, there are a lot of things that you could say about Paul Pogba. He's box office. He's every team's dream from a PR and a social media standpoint. He's great on social media. He's great. You can't knock his branding. If his play on the field was equivalent, he'd be the best player in the world. Before he signed, he was already tipped to be the future Ballon d'Or winner. It hasn't worked out that way. It hasn't. I've been very critical of Paul. I think Paul has a lot of talent. I think he thinks he has more talent than he actually does. But I think Paul is a talented player that should be in that conversation for one of the world's best midfielders. But he has held himself back. And frankly, he's kind of exposed himself. At Juventus, he was tipped to be so many of these things, but he was never, ever the best midfielder in that side. The same thing applies to France. Paul has succeeded when he's been placed around great midfielders. At Juventus, it was Arturo Vidal, Claudio Marchisio, and you could say Andrea Pirlo was there as well. Yes, he was great around them. Kudos to you, Paul. That's great. I'm not going to hold that against you. You were young. For France, you kind of see the same thing. He didn't really excel at Euro 2016 because he was playing in a role that didn't suit him. But once they threw Conte in the mix with Blaise Matuidi, Paul Pogba, you saw the best of him. I don't think he was the greatest player for France, but he was very good. He was good at the World Cup. Not the best, not the greatest, but he was good. So we've seen Paul adapt and succeed in those environments. But at Manchester United, he's had McTominay. No disrespect to McTominay. He's had Fred. He's had Nemanja Matic. He's had Ander Herrera. The list could go on. But those players aren't at the same caliber as the players that he's played with at France and the players that he's played with for Juventus. Now you have Bruno Fernandes. Now the sole responsibility to create isn't on Paul. Now, when United have to create from deeper positions, we don't have to see Paul touch the ball 5 or 6 times before he plays a long diagonal ball. Things are finally looking like they could go into the right direction. United could sell Paul Pogba and regain a lot of money and build around Bruno. But now Paul is probably looking at Manchester United and thinking, they finally brought in a good player. They finally brought in a player that's at my level. I love Bruno. I think Bruno's everything that Paul should have been without the nonsense in behind the scenes, without the nonsense in the dressing room, without the social media propaganda. Paul is a brand. Bruno is an elite player that doesn't have that brand yet. And it's not that Paul is a bad player, but the brand speaks more to his value than his actual play on the field. And it has since he's gone to England. Bruno has come to Manchester United. He's been a dream for them because of the fact that he's come and he's produced. No issues yet. Nothing in the media yet. And it looks like it probably won't be that way. Seems like a good kid, seems quiet. Not to say that Paul isn't, but there's a lot of things that come with Paul Pogba that shouldn't have to come with Paul Pogba. But now when you look at Manchester United's midfield, you have Paul Pogba who could score goals and create if he comes back fully fit, which he should be in the next few weeks, and you have Bruno Fernandes. To me, that's one of the best midfielders in the league. You have him, you have those two, you put McTominay, Fred, or Matic in behind them, you have a great midfield that should finish in the top 4. I look at the midfields, Liverpool's midfield isn't better than theirs. Liverpool as a whole may be better than Manchester United, but Liverpool's midfield isn't better than United's with Paul Pogba and Bruno Fernandes. Leicester City's midfield isn't better. Chelsea's midfield isn't better. The list goes on. This is the tipping point for Manchester United. They have a good defense that works efficiently and doesn't concede too many goals with a top 3 goalkeeper. With Bruno Fernandes and Paul Pogba, they have a great midfield, arguably one of the best in the league, if not top 3 to 2. And then the attack is blooming before our eyes. Do they need to bring in players? Yes. Are they going to? Let's hope so. But what we see transpiring at Manchester United should not be overlooked. We shouldn't sweep it over the rug. They're going to be great again, folks. It's been a long time. We've all had our jokes. We've all been able to chirp and make fun, and the banter's been great. But they finally got it right. Paul Pogba, whether he stays or whether he goes, it's beneficial to United. If he goes, use the money wisely. If he stays, you have an elite midfield with an attack that is blooming before our eyes and a defense that's competent and looks to be solid. And frankly, personally, they just get rid of the manager. I never want to see anyone fired. But if you have the opportunity to get an elite manager like Max Allegri, Mauricio Pochettino, Thomas Tuchel, the names could go on. I'm not telling you who's going to be the next Manchester United manager, but if they could do that and have United build around Pogba and Fernandes, the sky's the limit, and it's only a matter of time before United are great once again. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching, and subscribe here for your latest tactical analysis and daily commentary on the Interview show. And if that wasn't enough, don't forget you could find more organic, unfiltered soccer/football analysis on the Interviews podcast, the best soccer/football podcast in the world, available on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and any Android apps on your Android devices.